To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Note. The antiseptic smell of Pine Valley General Hospital had always made Russell Jackson's stomach turn, but tonight it felt like a physical assault. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as he sat beside his daughter Emma's motionless form, her 17-year-old face pale against the stark white pillow. The machines beeped in their mechanical rhythm, the only sound breaking the suffocating silence. "There's little chance she'll wake up," Dr. Hendricks had said barely an hour ago, his words cutting through Russell like a serrated blade. The drunk driver who'd T-boned Emma's car at the intersection near her high school had walked away with scratches. Emma hadn't been so lucky. Russell ran his calloused hands through his graying hair, his construction worker's frame hunched with exhaustion. 22 years of marriage, 18 years of fatherhood, and this was where it led. Watching his only child fight for her life while machines did the breathing for her. "I'm going to get some coffee," Tricia said softly, her voice hoarse from crying. His wife of 22 years looked as shattered as he felt, her usually perfect blonde hair disheveled, her makeup streaked with tears. "Do you want anything?" Russell shook his head without looking up. "Just stay close." The sound of her heels clicking against the linoleum faded down the corridor, leaving him alone with Emma and the steady rhythm of the ventilator. He reached over to adjust her pillow, trying to make her more comfortable even though the doctors said she couldn't feel anything. As he lifted her head gently, a piece of paper crinkled beneath the hospital gown. Russell frowned, carefully extracting what appeared to be a folded note that had somehow gotten caught in her clothing. His hands trembled as he unfolded it, recognizing Emma's careful handwriting immediately. "Dad, if you're reading this, check locker 89 at my school to find the truth about Mom and Mr. Merritt. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you myself. I love you, Emma." The words hit Russell like a physical blow. Lance Merritt, Emma's AP English teacher. Russell had met him at parent-teacher conferences, had even shared a beer with the man at the school's fundraising barbecue last spring. Lance was married to a woman named Bonita, had 2 young kids of his own. Russell's vision blurred as rage coursed through his veins. His hands crumpled the note before he caught himself, smoothing it out carefully. Emma had known. His little girl had discovered something that had torn her world apart, and she'd been carrying this burden alone. The timing of the accident suddenly took on a sinister new dimension. Emma had been driving home from school at an unusual time, 3:47 p.m. according to the police report. She should have been in drama club practice until 5. Russell's jaw clenched as he stared at his daughter's bruised face. Had she been upset? Distracted? Racing home to confront someone? When Tricia returned with 2 steaming cups of hospital coffee, Russell was staring out the window at the parking lot, the note safely tucked into his wallet. "Any change?" she asked, settling into the chair beside him. "No," Russell replied, his voice steady despite the hurricane building inside his chest. "Nothing yet." But as he watched his wife's reflection in the window, saw the way she kept checking her phone, the way her eyes wouldn't quite meet his, Russell Jackson began planning. He'd built his construction company from nothing through sheer determination and an understanding that some foundations needed to be completely torn down before you could build something better. It was time to do some demolition work. Chapter 2. The Discovery. Russell Jackson had always been a man who finished what he started. At 45, he built Jackson Construction from a one-man operation with a borrowed truck into a company that employed 37 people across Pine Valley County. He understood blueprints, load-bearing walls, and the importance of a solid foundation. What he was about to discover would shake everything he'd built his life on. The next morning, Russell left Tricia at the hospital with strict instructions to call if Emma's condition changed. "I need to go home and shower, maybe grab some clean clothes," he'd told her, watching as relief flickered across his wife's face. He'd been studying that face for 22 years, cataloging every expression, every tell. The relief was new. Instead of going home, Russell drove straight to Pine Valley High School. As a major contractor who'd renovated half the school's facilities over the past 5 years, he had maintained friendly relationships with the maintenance staff. Gene Richardson, the head custodian, had worked with Russell on the new gymnasium project. "Russell, hell of a thing about Emma," Gene said, shaking his head as he unlocked the school's main entrance. "How's she doing?" "Fighting," Russell replied simply. "Gene, I need a favor." Emma left something in her locker, and Trisha asked me to grab it. Think you could help me out? Jean's weathered face creased with sympathy. Course, buddy. Which locker? 89. As they walked through the empty hallways, Russell's mind wandered to his family's history. He'd met Trisha Kuhn when she was 21 and he was 23, both of them young and hungry for something better than Pine Valley had to offer. She'd been working as a secretary at the county courthouse, dreaming of bigger things. He'd been a laborer then, working for someone else's company, dreaming of his own. They'd built their life together piece by piece. The modest house on Elm Street that Russell had personally renovated. The successful business that had allowed Trisha to quit her job and focus on being a mother. Emma, their miracle baby who'd arrived after 3 heartbreaking miscarriages. Here we go, Jean said, working the master key. Locker 89. The locker door swung open, revealing the typical teenage chaos. Textbooks, makeup, a spare sweatshirt. But taped to the inside of the door was an envelope marked for Dad only in Emma's handwriting. Russell's hands were steady as he took the envelope, but his heart was hammering against his ribs. Thanks, Jean. I owe you one. Just take care of that girl of yours, Jean replied, clasping Russell's shoulder. In his truck, parked in the school's empty lot, Russell opened the envelope. Inside were 3 printed emails, 2 photographs, and another handwritten note from Emma. Dad, I printed these from Mom's laptop when she left it open. The photos are from Mom's phone. I saw them when she asked me to check a text while she was driving. I've been sick about this for weeks. I don't know what to do. I love you both, but you deserve to know. Emma. The emails painted a picture that made Russell's vision go red around the edges. 6 months of correspondence between Trisha and Lance Merritt. Not just an affair, a relationship that had been building towards something permanent. Russell suspects nothing, one email read. He's so focused on the Morrison project that he barely notices when I'm gone. We could be more careful, but honestly, I think he's too dense to figure it out even if we weren't. Lance's response was equally damning. Bonita's the same way. Too busy with her book club and tennis lessons to pay attention. Sometimes I think we could run away together and they wouldn't notice for weeks. But it was the final email that made Russell's hands shake with rage. Lance, I've been thinking about our conversation. You're right. Emma's almost graduated. Once she's off to college, there's nothing keeping me here. Russell's life insurance policy would set us up nicely if something were to happen. Accidents on construction sites aren't exactly uncommon. The photographs were intimate shots of his wife and Lance Merritt in what Russell recognized as the bedroom of the Riverside Motel. In one, Trisha was wearing the diamond necklace Russell had given her for their 20th anniversary. Russell sat in his truck for 20 minutes, reading and rereading the evidence. His daughter had been carrying this knowledge, this poison, for weeks. She'd been protecting him, trying to find a way to tell him that wouldn't destroy their family completely. Now Emma was fighting for her life, and Russell was left with the bitter understanding that his marriage had been a lie. But more than that, his wife and her lover had been discussing his murder. The Russell Jackson who'd sat in that hospital room the night before would have confronted Trisha, demanded explanations, maybe even tried to save their marriage. But that man had died the moment he'd read his wife's casual discussion of making him a convenient accident statistic. The man who drove away from Pine Valley High School was someone else entirely. Someone who understood that some structures were too fundamentally damaged to repair. They needed to be demolished completely, and Russell Jackson was very good at demolition. As he drove back toward the hospital, Russell began to plan. Trisha and Lance thought they were clever, thought they'd covered their tracks. They had no idea that Emma had been watching, learning, documenting. Most importantly, they had no idea what Russell was capable of when someone threatened his family. That was about to change. Chapter 3, The Foundation. Russell Jackson had learned early in his construction career that the most dangerous buildings were the ones that looked solid from the outside. You could shore up walls, replace broken windows, even gut entire floors, but if the foundation was rotten, the whole structure would eventually collapse. His marriage, he was beginning to understand, had been built on a foundation of lies. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty at 2 a.m. Russell sat across from Dr. Hendricks, Emma's neurosurgeon, nursing his 3rd cup of coffee while the doctor explained the complexities of traumatic brain injury. The next 48 hours are critical, Dr. Hendricks was saying. The swelling has stabilized, but we won't know the extent of cognitive damage until she regains consciousness. If she regains consciousness. Russell nodded, projecting the image of a concerned father hanging on every word. Inside, his mind was working through blueprints of a different sort. Doctor, I need to ask you something in confidence. If Emma does wake up, will she remember everything that happened before the accident? Memory issues are common with this type of injury, but there's no way to predict the pattern. She might remember everything perfectly, or she might have gaps. Some patients lose hours, others lose days or weeks. Russell absorbed this information. If Emma woke up with her memory intact, she'd remember the burden she'd been carrying. If she didn't remember, she'd be spared the knowledge of her mother's betrayal. Either way, Russell now had something Tricia and Lance didn't know he possessed: documentation of their affair and their plans. Mr. Jackson? Dr. Hendricks was studying him with concern. Are you all right? Just tired, Russell replied. It's been a long day. When he returned to Emma's room, Tricia was asleep in the reclining chair, her phone clutched in her hand, even in sleep. Russell sat in the visitor's chair and opened his laptop, connecting to the hospital's guest Wi-Fi. For the next 2 hours, while his wife slept and his daughter fought for her life, Russell researched. Lance Merritt had been teaching at Pine Valley High for 8 years. He'd moved to town from Phoenix after what local newspaper archives described as an employment dispute at his previous school. Reading between the lines of the sanitized articles, Russell suspected Lance had left Phoenix under a cloud of suspicion. More interesting was Lance's wife, Bonita Elliott Merritt. She'd inherited a substantial trust fund from her grandmother, enough that Lance's teacher's salary was essentially play money. They lived in a house worth 3 times what a teacher could afford, and Bonita's social media showed a lifestyle funded by old money. Russell also discovered something else. Bonita Merritt had hired Jackson Construction 2 years ago for a pool house renovation. Russell remembered the job vaguely. Lance had been home during most of the work, asking questions about foundation requirements and load calculations. At the time, Russell had assumed the man was just curious. Now he wondered if Lance had been studying Russell, learning his habits, his schedule. At dawn, Tricia stirred in her chair. Any change? She asked, the same question she'd been asking every few hours. No change, Russell replied, closing his laptop. Tricia, we need to talk about practical things. I should probably go home today, shower, check on the business. Maybe you should do the same. His wife's face brightened slightly. Actually, that might be good. I should call the school, let them know I won't be coming in today. Tricia worked part-time as a substitute teacher, a job that gave her plenty of flexible schedule. Flexible enough, Russell thought grimly, for afternoon motel visits. I also think we should reach out to Emma's friends, Russell continued, watching his wife's face carefully. Maybe some of them would want to visit when she's ready for visitors. Do you know if she's been having any problems lately? Trouble with friends, boys, school stress? Tricia's composure slipped for just a moment, a tightening around her eyes that Russell might have missed if he hadn't been looking for it. Not that I know of. She's been a little quiet lately, but you know teenagers. Russell nodded. I'll swing by the school anyway, talk to her teachers. Sometimes they notice things we miss. I don't think that's necessary, Tricia said quickly. Mr. Merritt called yesterday to ask about Emma. He was very concerned. That was thoughtful of him, Russell replied evenly. I should thank him personally. The look that flashed across his wife's face lasted less than a second, but Russell caught it. Fear. As Russell prepared to leave the hospital, he mentally reviewed what he knew. Tricia and Lance had been conducting their affair for at least 6 months. They'd been careless enough that Emma had discovered them. They'd discussed Russell's death as a convenient solution to their problem. And now, with Emma fighting for her life, they thought they were safe. Russell Jackson had spent his career understanding how things fit together, how pressure points worked, how to bring down structures efficiently and completely. Over the next few days, he would demonstrate to his wife and her lover that they'd underestimated the wrong man. The foundation of their comfortable little affair was about to be demolished. Chapter 4. Laying Groundwork. Russell Jackson had always believed that patience was a contractor's greatest tool. Rush a job, and you'd spend twice as long fixing mistakes. Take your time, plan every detail, and the work would be clean, permanent, and impossible to undo. He was about to apply that philosophy to the complete destruction of 2 lives. 3 days after discovering Emma's evidence, Russell sat in his office at Jackson Construction, surrounded by project folders and building permits. To anyone watching, He appeared to be a devoted father catching up on work while his daughter recovered. In reality, he was orchestrating the most important demolition project of his career. His first call was to Mickey Middleton, a private investigator who'd helped Russell track down contractors who'd stolen equipment over the years. Mickey operated out of a strip mall office in the next county and had a reputation for thoroughness and discretion. Russell, hell of a thing about Emma. How's she doing? Fighting, Russell replied, the answer he'd given everyone. Mickey, I need your help with something sensitive. I think my wife is having an affair. Shit, buddy. I'm sorry to hear that. You want me to confirm it? I need more than confirmation. I need everything. Bank records, credit card statements, phone records, hotel receipts. I need to know every place they've been, every conversation they've had, every plan they've made. Mickey's tone grew serious. That's going to take some time and cost some money. Tom, I've got. Money's not an issue. Russell paused. Mickey, there's something else. I have reason to believe they've discussed harming me. I need evidence that would hold up in court. The line went quiet for a long moment. Russell, if you're in danger. I'm not in immediate danger, Russell cut him off. But I need to protect myself and my daughter. Can you do it? Give me 2 weeks. I'll get you everything. Russell's second call was to Devin Horton, a real estate attorney who'd handled several property acquisitions for Jackson Construction. Russell had helped Devin renovate his downtown office in exchange for legal services, and the man owed him favors. Devin, I need you to quietly prepare divorce papers. I want everything. The house, the business, Emma's college fund. I want my wife to walk away with nothing. Russell, I have to advise you that Michigan is a no-fault state. Even with adultery, she's entitled to. Not if she's been planning to murder me for the insurance money, Russell interrupted. I'll have evidence. I need you to be ready to move fast when I give you the word. His third call required more delicacy. Bonita Merritt answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. Mrs. Merritt? This is Russell Jackson. I worked on your pool house a couple years back. Of course. How's your daughter? Lance told me about the accident. We've been praying for her. Russell wondered if Lance had also told his wife about his plans to run away with his student's mother. She's stable, thank you. Actually, that's why I'm calling. The hospital bills are going to be substantial, and I'm thinking about selling some assets. I remember you mentioning that you might be interested in buying that vacant lot behind your property. The lot in question was a 3-acre parcel that Russell had purchased as an investment 5 years earlier. It backed up to the Merritt property and would be perfect for someone wanting privacy. Oh, that's interesting timing, Bonita said. Lance and I were just discussing expanding our garden. What are you asking? Russell quoted a price 20% below market value, enough to seem desperate, but not enough to raise suspicion. I need to move fast, so I'm willing to negotiate. Let me talk to Lance and get back to you. After hanging up, Russell smiled grimly. The lot was worthless to him now, but selling it would serve multiple purposes. It would give him a reason to interact with both Merritt and his wife. It would make him appear financially vulnerable. And most importantly, it would make Lance Merritt very, very confident. That evening, Russell returned to the hospital carrying a bag of Trisha's favorite Thai food. His wife looked tired but relieved to see him. Any news from the school? She asked as they sat beside Emma's bed. Mr. Merritt called today, Russell said casually. Wanted to know how Emma was doing. He seemed really broken up about it. Trisha's chopsticks paused halfway to her mouth. That's sweet of him. He's always been fond of Emma. Yeah, he invited me to have coffee tomorrow. Wants to discuss setting up some kind of scholarship fund in Emma's honor. Russell watched his wife's face carefully. I thought that was a nice gesture. The lie came easily, and Trisha's reaction confirmed what Russell had suspected. Her face went pale, and she set down her food. Maybe that's premature, she said quickly. I mean, Emma's going to be fine. She doesn't need a memorial scholarship. It wouldn't be a memorial, just a scholarship for students interested in English literature. Mr. Merritt thinks Emma would have wanted to help other kids who love reading. Russell could see his wife's mind racing, trying to figure out what Lance might say, what he might reveal. She was trapped between wanting to protect her lover and not being able to explain her concern. I just think we should focus on Emma's recovery right now, Trisha said finally. You're probably right, Russell agreed. I'll tell him we're not ready to discuss it yet. The relief on his wife's face was almost comical. As Russell watched her resume eating, he reflected on how thoroughly he'd misjudged the woman he'd loved for over 2 decades. The Trisha he'd married had been ambitious but honest, dreaming of a better life, but willing to work for it. This woman was someone else entirely, someone who could discuss his murder over email while sitting in their daughter's hospital room. Emma stirred slightly in her bed, the first movement she'd made in days. Both Russell and Tricia immediately focused on their daughter, but Russell was thinking about something else. When Emma woke up, she'd want to know if her father had seen her note, and Russell would be ready with an answer. Chapter 5. Structural Analysis. Lance Merritt was exactly the kind of man Russell had expected, handsome in an academic way, with the soft hands of someone who'd never done real work. They sat across from each other at Rosewood Cafe, Pine Valley's attempt at sophisticated dining, discussing Emma's condition while Russell studied his daughter's English teacher with the cold assessment of a predator. "She's such a bright girl," Lance was saying, his voice carrying just the right note of concern. Her essay on Wuthering Heights last semester was graduate-level work. "She has real insight into human nature." More than you know, Russell thought grimly. Emma had certainly demonstrated insight into Lance's nature. "Her mother and I appreciate how much you've encouraged her writing," Russell replied. "Tricia mentions you've been very supportive." A slight flush crept up Lance's neck. She's a wonderful woman. Very devoted to Emma." "Yes, she is." Russell sipped his coffee, letting the silence stretch. "We've been married 22 years next month." "Amazing how time flies." Lance shifted uncomfortably. That's wonderful. "Bonita and I have been married 12 years. Not quite as impressive. Different generations, I suppose. Bonita seems happy, though. I ran into her at the grocery store yesterday. She mentioned you two are thinking about expanding your garden." This was another lie, but Russell watched Lance's reaction carefully. The man's face brightened with what looked like genuine affection when discussing his wife. "She's been wanting to do more landscaping. The property has so much potential." Lance paused. "Actually, I heard you might be selling that lot behind our place." "Possibly. Hospital bills, you know." Russell projected exactly the right amount of worried resignation. "I hate to sell it. It's a good investment, but Emma's care has to come first." Of course. Lance leaned forward, his concern obviously genuine. "Russell, if there's anything Bonita and I can do to help. I know what it's like to worry about money when family is involved." For a moment, Russell glimpsed the man Lance might have been, someone capable of real empathy and kindness. It made what Russell was planning feel almost like a public service. "Actually, there might be something," Russell said. "I'm liquidating some assets, and I could use advice from someone with financial experience." Bonita mentioned she handles investments. "She's very good with money," Lance confirmed. "Inherited some financial sense along with her grandmother's trust fund. I'm sure she'd be happy to help." Russell filed away the information about Bonita's inheritance. "Maybe the three of us could have dinner sometime this week, when things settle down with Emma." "I'll talk to Bonita tonight," Lance promised. As they parted ways in the cafe parking lot, Lance placed a hand on Russell's shoulder. "Russell, I want you to know that if there's ever anything at all, you need help with, you can count on me. Emma is special to all of us." Russell managed what he hoped looked like a grateful smile. "Thank you, Lance. That means more than you know." Driving back to the hospital, Russell reflected on the interesting dynamics he'd observed. Lance Merritt wasn't the calculating villain Russell had expected. He seemed genuinely fond of his wife, genuinely concerned about Emma, and apparently felt real guilt about his affair with Tricia. That guilt would make him predictable. Bonita Merritt, on the other hand, was an unknown quantity. Wealthy, intelligent, and by all accounts devoted to her husband. Russell wondered how she'd react when she learned what Lance had been doing during his late faculty meetings. That evening, Russell found Tricia in Emma's room, holding their daughter's hand and speaking softly. For a moment, the scene looked like every parent's nightmare, a mother keeping vigil beside her injured child. Then Russell noticed that Tricia was typing on her phone with her free hand. "Any change?" he asked, taking his usual seat. "She squeezed my hand earlier," Tricia said, looking up hopefully. "Dr. Hendricks thinks it's a good sign." Russell nodded, pulling out his own phone. "Oh, I had coffee with Mr. Merritt today. He's really concerned about Emma." Tricia's fingers stopped moving on her phone screen. "That was nice of him. What did you two talk about?" "Emma's education, mostly. He thinks she should apply for more scholarships. Apparently her writing is exceptional." Russell paused. "He also mentioned that his wife might be able to help us with some financial planning. Medical bills and all that. I don't think we need." "Tricia, We might be looking at hundreds of thousands in medical costs, Russell interrupted. Emma could need rehabilitation, special care. If Lance's wife can help us make smart decisions about liquidating assets, we should listen. His wife's face had gone pale. What assets are you thinking about liquidating? The business, maybe. Some of the investment properties. The house, if it comes to that. Russell watched his wife's expression carefully. Whatever it takes to give Emma the best possible care. Tricia stared at him in shock. Russell, you can't be serious. The business is your life's work. Emma is my life's work, Russell replied simply. Everything else is just stuff. For the first time since he'd discovered her betrayal, Russell saw something that might have been genuine emotion in his wife's face. Not love. He was past believing in that, but something that looked like regret. We'll figure something out, she said softly. There has to be another way. Russell took her hand, noting how she flinched slightly at his touch. I hope so. But I want you to know that I'd give up everything we have if it meant Emma would be okay. As he said the words, Russell realized they were absolutely true. He would sacrifice everything for his daughter's well-being. The difference was that after reading Tricia's emails, he no longer considered his wife part of everything they had. She was just another obstacle to be removed. That night, alone in his home office while Tricia stayed at the hospital, Russell received a text from Mickey Middleton. Got some interesting preliminary findings. Can we meet tomorrow? Russell smiled as he typed back, morning works. And Mickey? Bring everything. The demolition was about to begin in earnest. Chapter 6, Pressure Points. Mickey Middleton's office smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap coffee, but his information was worth more than gold. Russell sat across from the private investigator's cluttered desk, studying photographs and bank records that painted a picture of betrayal more extensive than he'd imagined. They've been sloppy as hell, Mickey said, spreading documents across his desk. Your wife opened a separate bank account 6 months ago. She's been transferring money from your joint account in small amounts, $200-300 at a time. Nothing that would trigger automatic alerts, but it adds up. Russell studied the bank statements. Over 6 months, Tricia had siphoned nearly $15,000. What's she spending it on? Motel rooms, mostly. But also this. Mickey slid a jewelry store receipt across the desk. She bought Lance Merritt a Rolex 2 weeks ago. $1,700. Russell's jaw tightened. He'd given Tricia access to their accounts because he trusted her. The watch purchase was particularly galling. Russell had been wearing the same Timex for 8 years. There's more, Mickey continued. Phone records show they've been texting constantly. Hundreds of messages. I managed to retrieve some of them. He handed Russell a folder. It's not just an affair, Russell. They're planning a life together. The text messages were even more damning than the emails Emma had found. Tricia and Lance had discussed travel plans, looked at houses in other states, even researched how to transfer money internationally. Most chilling was a series of texts from the week before Emma's accident. Tricia, he suspects something. Asked me why I was gone so long yesterday. Lance, we need to be more careful. Tricia, or we need to speed up our timeline. I'm tired of living a lie. Lance, what about Emma? Tricia, she graduates in 6 months. We could be gone by summer. Lance and Russell? Tricia, construction accidents happen all the time. His life insurance would solve all our problems. Russell set down the folder with steady hands, though inside he was burning with rage. Mickey, I need you to keep digging. I want to know every detail of their plan. Russell, this is evidence of conspiracy. You should take this to the police. Not yet. Russell's voice was calm, controlled. I need them to make a move first. I need them to try something. Mickey frowned. That's dangerous, buddy. These people are talking about killing you. They're talking. They haven't acted. Russell stood to leave. Keep watching them. I want to know every move they make. Russell's next stop was the law office of Devin Horton. The attorney reviewed Mickey's evidence with professional interest, making notes in a legal pad. This is solid evidence of adultery and conspiracy, Devin said finally. With this, we can probably get you everything in a divorce settlement. I don't want a divorce settlement, Russell replied. I want them destroyed. Devin looked up sharply. Russell, I understand you're angry, but they plan to murder me, Devin. My wife has been stealing money from our accounts to fund her affair. They discussed my death like it was a business transaction. Russell's voice remained steady, but his eyes were cold. I want legal destruction. I want them to lose everything. What exactly are you thinking? Russell outlined his plan. It was complex, requiring precise timing and careful manipulation. But it would be thorough. Devin listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly concerned. Russell, what you're describing is elaborate and potentially dangerous. They made it dangerous when they decided I was expendable, Russell replied. Are you with me or not? Devin studied his old friend for a long moment. You're not the same man who helped me renovate my office. No, Russell agreed. I'm not. That evening, Russell returned to the hospital to find Emma's room full of visitors. Several of her friends from school had come by, along with Bonita Merritt, who was arranging a bouquet of flowers. Mr. Jackson. Bonita rose to greet him, her face bright with sympathy. I hope you don't mind us visiting. The girls wanted to see Emma. Russell surveyed the room. Emma's friends, Caitlin Harris, Jody Moody, and Dana Singleton, sat around the bed, talking softly to his unconscious daughter. Tricia was chatting with Bonita near the window. Of course not, Russell said. Emma would love knowing her friends are here. As the girls said their goodbyes, promising to return soon, Russell noticed Caitlin lingering near Emma's bed. She glanced around to make sure the adults weren't watching, then leaned close to Emma's ear and whispered something. When she straightened, her eyes met Russell's across the room. Mr. Jackson, could I talk to you for a minute? Russell joined Caitlin in the hallway while the others remained in Emma's room. The 17-year-old looked nervous, twisting her hands as she spoke. Emma was really upset about something the last few weeks, Caitlin said quietly. She wouldn't tell me what it was, but she said she'd found out something terrible about someone she trusted. Russell's pulse quickened. Did she say anything else? She asked me if I thought people could change, like if someone you thought was good could actually be really bad. Caitlin's eyes filled with tears. I should have pushed her to tell me more. Maybe if she'd talked about it, she wouldn't have been so distracted when she was driving. Russell placed a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. Caitlin, what happened to Emma isn't your fault. Sometimes adults put burdens on kids that they shouldn't have to carry. She did say one thing. Caitlin continued. She said she had evidence of something, and she didn't know whether to tell her dad or handle it herself. I told her she should always trust her dad. That was good advice, Russell said softly. As Caitlin rejoined her friends, Russell felt something shift inside his chest. Emma had been struggling with the knowledge of her mother's betrayal, trying to protect him while carrying the burden alone. She'd been distracted enough while driving to get hit by a drunk driver. In that moment, Russell Jackson stopped thinking about justice or revenge. He started thinking about war. When he returned to Emma's room, Bonita Merritt was saying goodbye to Tricia. I'll call you tomorrow about dinner plans, she said warmly. Lance is looking forward to helping however we can. After the visitors left, Russell sat beside his daughter's bed, taking her hand in his. I found your note, sweetheart, he whispered. And I found what you left for me at school. You don't have to worry anymore. Daddy's going to handle everything. For the first time in days, Emma's fingers moved slightly in his grip. Russell smiled grimly. His daughter was coming back, and when she woke up, the people who had hurt their family would already be destroyed. Chapter 7. The collapse begins. Emma Jackson opened her eyes on a Tuesday morning, exactly 7 days after her accident. Russell was alone with her when it happened, having sent Tricia home to shower and change clothes. The moment his daughter's eyes focused on his face, Russell knew she remembered everything. Dad. Emma's voice was hoarse from the breathing tube that had been removed the day before. I'm here, sweetheart. Did you find my note? Russell squeezed her hand gently. I found it. I found everything. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I didn't know how. You have nothing to apologize for, Russell said firmly. You were protecting me, and you were brave. But now it's my turn to protect you. What are you going to do? Russell smiled, and Emma saw something in her father's expression that she'd never seen before, something cold and final. I'm going to handle it. Dr. Hendricks arrived an hour later, followed shortly by Tricia, who burst into tears at seeing Emma awake and alert. Russell watched his wife embrace their daughter, noting how Emma's body stiffened slightly at the contact. How do you feel, baby? Tricia asked, stroking Emma's hair. Tired, Emma replied simply. And my head hurts. As Dr. Hendricks explained Emma's recovery timeline, at least another week in the hospital, followed by months of physical therapy, Russell's phone buzzed with a text from Mickey Middleton. They're meeting at the Riverside Motel. Room 237. Now, Russell excused himself to take a business call, walking out to his truck in the hospital parking lot. Instead of calling Mickey back, he drove straight to the motel. The Riverside was Pine Valley's shabbiest accommodation, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. Russell parked where he could see the second-floor walkway and waited. 20 minutes later, Lance Merritt's silver Honda pulled into the lot. Russell watched his wife's lover climb the stairs to room 237, key already in hand. They'd done this so many times it was routine. Russell waited another 10 minutes, then walked up to room 237 and knocked. "Who is it?" Lance's voice muffled through the door. "Maintenance," Russell replied, disguising his voice slightly. "Need to check the water pressure." The door opened, and Lance Merritt found himself face-to-face with the husband of his lover. Lance was shirtless, his hair disheveled, his face going white with shock. "Russell? What are you?" Russell pushed past Lance into the room. Tricia was in the bed, pulling a sheet up to cover herself, her face a mask of terror. "Interesting," Russell said calmly, pulling out his phone and taking pictures. "Very interesting." "Russell, let me explain," Tricia started. "No need," Russell interrupted. "I understand completely. You two have been planning my death so you can run away together with my insurance money. You've been stealing from our accounts. You've been conducting this affair while our daughter fought for her life in the hospital." Lance stepped forward, his hands raised placatingly. "Russell, please, we can work this out." Russell turned to face Lance, and the teacher took an involuntary step backward. "Can we?" "Because I've read the emails, Lance. I've seen the text messages. I know about the watch, the travel plans, the discussions about convenient construction accidents." Tricia was crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "Russell, please, I never meant for it to go this far." "But it did go this far," Russell replied. "And now Emma knows. She's been carrying the knowledge of your betrayal for weeks. She was so upset about it that she wasn't paying attention when she was driving." "You can't blame us for her accident," Lance protested. Russell's expression didn't change, but something in his voice made both of them freeze. "I can blame you for whatever I want, and I can do whatever I decide is appropriate." He pulled out a manila envelope and tossed it onto the bed between them. "Divorce papers. Tricia, you're getting nothing. The house, the business, Emma's college fund, it's all mine. And Lance, your wife is going to be very interested in these photos." Lance lunged forward, reaching for the envelope, but Russell caught his wrist and twisted it behind his back with the easy strength of someone who'd spent 20 years in construction. Lance gasped in pain as Russell applied pressure. "Don't touch what isn't yours," Russell said quietly. "You should have learned that lesson months ago." He released Lance, who stumbled backward, cradling his wrist. "You have 24 hours to tell your respective spouses, or I will." "And Lance, I'd start looking for a new job. The school board is going to be very interested in hearing about your relationship with a student's mother." Russell walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and that insurance policy you two were so interested in? I canceled it yesterday. So if you're still thinking about arranging an accident, you'd better think again." He left them sitting in the motel room, Tricia sobbing and Lance staring at the envelope like it contained a death sentence. It did. Russell drove back to the hospital, his hands steady on the wheel, his heart rate normal. The first phase was complete. Now Lance and Tricia would panic, make mistakes, try to salvage something from their wreckage. And Russell would be waiting for them. When he returned to Emma's room, his daughter looked up at him with knowing eyes. "Is it done?" "It started," Russell replied, taking her hand. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Emma said, and for the first time in a week, she smiled. Chapter 8. Total Demolition. The next morning brought chaos to Russell Jackson's carefully ordered world, but it was the kind of chaos he'd engineered. His phone started ringing at 6 a.m. with a call from Bonita Merritt, her voice shaking with rage and disbelief. "You son of a bitch," she said without preamble. "What kind of game are you playing?" Russell was drinking coffee in his kitchen, having left Emma in Tricia's care for the night. "Good morning, Bonita. I take it Lance told you. He told me you've been harassing them, making accusations." "I showed them photographs," Russell interrupted calmly. "Would you like to see them?" The line went quiet for a long moment. When Bonita spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, more vulnerable. "How long?" 6 months, minimum. Probably longer." Russell heard what sounded like something breaking in the background, then Bonita's voice again, stronger now. "That lying piece of shit. That motherfucking liar. Bonita, we should meet. We have some things to discuss." "Oh," We're going to discuss more than things, she replied grimly. Where? They met at a diner on the outskirts of town, away from prying eyes and wagging tongues. Bonita Merritt looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled, her eyes red from crying and lack of sleep. Show me, she said without preamble. Russell slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs, bank statements, email printouts, and hotel receipts. Bonita went through them methodically, her expression growing harder with each piece of evidence. $1,700 for a watch, she said finally. With my grandmother's money. Money he told me he needed for school supplies. I'm sorry, Bonita. She looked up at him sharply. Are you? Because you don't look sorry. You look like a man who's getting exactly what he wanted. Russell studied her face. Bonita Merritt was intelligent, wealthy, and now thoroughly betrayed. She was also, he realized, potentially very dangerous to his wife and Lance. What do you want from them? He asked. Everything, Bonita replied without hesitation. I want Lance to lose his job, his reputation, his future. I want your wife to lose her family, her home, her security. I want them both to understand what it feels like to lose everything you thought you could count on. Russell nodded slowly. I can help with that. Why would you help me? Because they made a mistake when they involved my daughter in their plans. Emma found evidence of their affair and has been carrying that burden for weeks. She was distracted while driving because of what they put her through. Bonita's expression softened slightly. How is Emma? Awake, recovering, and old enough to testify about what she discovered if this goes to court. They spent the next hour planning. Bonita had resources Russell lacked, social connections, political influence, and old money's ability to open doors that stayed closed to working-class contractors. Russell had documentation, investigative skills, and a personal understanding of both Lance and Trisha's weaknesses. The school board meets Thursday night, Bonita said. My family has donated enough money to Pine Valley High that they'll listen when I request Lance's termination. I can provide evidence of his relationship with a student's parent. That should be enough for immediate dismissal. What about your wife? Russell's smile was cold. Trisha is about to discover that stealing $15,000 from joint accounts constitutes felony theft. She's also going to learn that conspiracy to commit murder, even just discussing it, can be prosecuted under Michigan law. Bonita raised an eyebrow. You've been busy. I've been thorough. As they prepared to leave, Bonita placed a hand on Russell's arm. I want you to know, I had no idea. If I'd known what Lance was doing, you would have done what any reasonable person would do, Russell replied. The problem is that Lance and Trisha stopped being reasonable the moment they decided I was expendable. That afternoon, Russell returned to the hospital to find Trisha pacing Emma's room like a caged animal. Their daughter was sleeping, finally off the strongest pain medications. We need to talk, Trisha said the moment Russell entered. I thought we covered everything yesterday at the motel. Trisha flinched. Russell, please. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? Russell kept his voice low, mindful of their sleeping daughter. Trisha, you planned my murder. You stole money from our accounts. You conducted a 6-month affair while I was working to build a future for our family. I never meant for it to go that far. The things in those emails, they were just fantasies. We never would have actually hurt you. Russell studied his wife's face. She was lying, but he could see that she'd started to believe her own lies. It doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what you did. What about Emma? Are you going to destroy her family because of my mistakes? You destroyed her family when you chose Lance Merritt over your marriage vows. Russell's voice was steady, final. I'm just cleaning up the wreckage. Trisha collapsed into a chair, her face in her hands. What do you want? What will it take for you to forgive me? Russell looked at his wife, really looked at her, for what he knew would be the last time, as anything other than an enemy. She was still beautiful, still the woman he'd fallen in love with 23 years ago. But that woman had been replaced by someone who could casually discuss his death over lunch. There's nothing you can do, he said quietly. This marriage is over. Tomorrow, you'll be served with divorce papers. The day after that, you'll be arrested for theft and conspiracy. And sometime next week, you'll discover that your boyfriend has been fired and his wife has filed for divorce. Trisha looked up at him with desperate eyes. Russell, please. The only reason you're not in jail right now is because I don't want Emma to wake up to that chaos. But make no mistake, Trisha, you're finished. Emma stirred in her bed, her eyes opening slowly. Dad? Mom? What's wrong? Russell moved to his daughter's side, taking her hand. Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. Your mother was just leaving. Tricia stood slowly, understanding that she was being dismissed from her own daughter's life. At the door, she turned back one last time. I did love you, she said. Both of you. No, Russell replied. You loved what we could give you. There's a difference. After Tricia left, Emma squeezed her father's hand. Are you okay, Dad? Russell looked down at his daughter, his brave, intelligent daughter who tried to protect him even while carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. I'm exactly where I need to be. Chapter 9, New Foundation. 3 months later, Russell Jackson stood in Pine Valley's courthouse, watching as the judge handed down Lance Merritt's sentence. 6 months in county jail for conspiracy and theft, followed by 2 years probation. Lance's teaching license had been permanently revoked, his marriage to Bonita was over, and his reputation in Pine Valley was destroyed beyond repair. Tricia's sentencing had been the week before, 8 months for felony theft and conspiracy to commit murder. The prosecution had been thorough, presenting evidence of the stolen money, the murder plots, and the systematic betrayal of her family. She'd entered a plea deal, hoping for leniency, but the judge had been unimpressed by her tears and apologies. Russell felt no satisfaction watching his wife's lover led away in handcuffs. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about consequences. Some foundations were so rotten that they had to be completely removed before new construction could begin. Emma was waiting for him in the courthouse hallway, walking with only a slight limp now. The doctors said she'd make a full recovery, though she'd always have some scars from the accident. Russell thought those scars might serve as useful reminders about the importance of choosing who to trust. How do you feel? Emma asked as they walked toward the parking lot. Like it's over, Russell replied honestly. How do you feel? Free, Emma said after a moment. I know that sounds terrible, but I feel free. Russell understood. They were both free now, free from the lies, the deception, the slow poison of a marriage built on false foundations. It had been expensive freedom, but Russell had always believed in paying for quality construction. The house on Elm Street felt different now. Russell had changed the locks, donated most of Tricia's belongings to charity, and had the place professionally cleaned. He'd also had security cameras installed, not because he feared Tricia or Lance, but because he'd learned the importance of documenting everything. Emma was thriving despite everything she'd been through. Her grades hadn't suffered, her college applications were strong, and she'd started seeing a therapist who specialized in family trauma. She'd also started dating Clint Durham, a senior from her AP history class who treated her with the kind of respect Russell demanded from any boy interested in his daughter. The business was thriving too. Word had gotten around Pine Valley about Russell's divorce situation, and while some people whispered about his methods, everyone agreed that he'd been wronged. His phone had been ringing constantly with new contracts from people who appreciated a man who didn't let others take advantage of him. 6 weeks after the sentencing, Russell was working late in his office when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. Russell Jackson. Mr. Jackson? This is Bonita Merritt. I hope you don't mind me calling. Russell leaned back in his chair. He'd had minimal contact with Bonita since their collaboration in destroying their respective spouses. Not at all. How are you doing? Better than expected, honestly. The divorce was finalized last week. Lance gets nothing, obviously. I kept the house, the money, and my dignity. I'm glad to hear it. I'm calling because I wanted to thank you, and to let you know that I'm leaving Pine Valley. Russell wasn't surprised. Pine Valley was a small town with a long memory. Bonita would always be known here as the woman whose husband had cheated with a student's mother. Where are you heading? Colorado. I have some family there, and I've always wanted to try living in the mountains. I thought you should know that if you ever need anything, a reference, a favor, whatever, you can count on me. I appreciate that, Bonita. Russell, I want you to know that what we did, I don't feel guilty about it. They made their choices, and they lived with the consequences. That's how the world should work. After she hung up, Russell sat in his office thinking about consequences and new beginnings. Tricia and Lance were discovering that actions had permanent repercussions. Their comfortable assumption that Russell was too trusting, too decent, or too weak to fight back had been their fatal mistake. People in Pine Valley now knew that Russell Jackson was not a man to cross. His employees worked harder, his suppliers delivered on time, and his competitors kept their distance. It wasn't fear, exactly, It was respect for someone who finished what he started. That night, Russell had dinner with Emma at their kitchen table, the same table where they'd eaten thousands of meals as a family. But this wasn't the same family. This was better, honest, built on a foundation that wouldn't crack under pressure. "Dad," Emma said as they finished eating, "I've been thinking about Mom." Russell set down his fork and gave his daughter his full attention. "What about her? Do you think she'll ever try to contact us? When she gets out?" Russell considered the question carefully. "She might try, but Emma, you need to understand something. The woman who raised you and the woman who planned my murder are the same person. People don't change their fundamental nature. They just reveal it over time. So what do we do if she tries to come back?" Russell's smile was warm, but his eyes were steel. "We remember that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. And we protect what we've built here." Emma nodded, understanding. At 17, she'd learned lessons about trust, consequences, and self-protection that some people never learned. Russell was proud of her strength, even as he regretted the circumstances that had created it. Later that evening, as Russell sat on his front porch looking out at the neighborhood he'd helped build, his phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. "Russell, this is Lance. I get out next month. We need to talk. There are things you don't know about Trisha, things that happened before you married her, things that might change how you feel about everything." Russell read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Lance Merritt still didn't understand that it was over. He was still trying to manipulate, still trying to find angles and leverage points. Russell Jackson had learned to recognize rotten foundations when he saw them, and he'd learned that sometimes the only solution was complete demolition. He turned off his phone and went inside to check on Emma, who was doing homework at the kitchen table. She looked up when he entered, and her smile reminded him of why he'd fought so hard to protect their future. Some structures were worth saving. Others needed to be torn down so something better could be built in their place. Russell Jackson was very good at knowing the difference. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.